Peace, 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 everybody. So we'll let YouTube go out and touch someone. So in the meanwhile, while YouTube is doing that, getting everybody to hop on for this soul to soul conversation, what I want to do is just let y'all encourage you to feel free to put things in the comment and to express you have any questions or anything like that. I'll try to get to it like towards the end or whatever. And everyone that's kind of aligned on the same vibe, if you see like trolling like comments and stuff like that that's not even relevant to what we're discussing, please go ahead and hide it or block it so we can keep the vibe cool. All right. So I'll wait probably for about, a minute. And so we're going to, since the New Year's is kicked in, quote unquote, everybody's observing, but those of us that understand the real New Year's and the spring equinox, but we did cross over into January. And so I feel kind of was meditating, and I feel what I would share today will be helpful for all of us as we are seeking to start this, this whole new year with all the things that we might be concerned with, etc. So, all right. So let me know if y'all can hear me. Okay, in the comment, just put a thumbs up or something like that, and I'll go ahead and get into this. Okay, cool. Peace, peace. All right. So, what I want to talk about this morning is you cannot begin what you won't end. As simply as that is stated, when we look at it from a practice, if we be honest, a lot of us in practice doesn't match the ease and the simplicity of that statement. You cannot begin what you won't end. From a numerology point of view, inside the Living Soul numerology, I'm quite sure you've been hearing a lot of people talking about the 9 ended a cycle. We have begin a new cycle with the number 1. And so, the 9 signify, you know, closure, death, to set the tone for a birth of things. The challenge in that sometimes is what happens, as many times y'all have heard me speak about, is that we get lost in the transitions before the change or before the outcomes that we're desiring. And one of the things inside the transition that hinders us is not really fully understanding in practice. When I say understanding, the undertone is in practice, because that's the measurable. And so if you're not taking advantage of the transition, not acknowledging the transitions before the full thing manifests or the desired outcome that you're trying to get to land there so you can stay there, you have to make the proper, you have to get aligned with the transitions, because that's where you do the adapting, so that way you can get positioned for where you need to go. And so with that in mind, we're talking about you cannot begin what you won't end. The transition is in place for you to end. That's like your last, your last leg. Like, hey, the transition's here. Let's start ending some things so that way we can proceed to move forward. If you're frustrated in your progression in life, where it appears like as soon as I'm trying to move forward, there's something that keeps pulling me back, it's a signal somewhere that you have to end something. Okay. When everything from your base, your understanding is like, yo, everything is set up for me to really move forward, but something keeps pulling you back. You got to cancel something. It could be a relationship. It could be um, a job. It could, of course, it could be a certain thought, that's conflicting with where you need to go. In other words, you got to flip your mindset somewhere. There's a variety of different things, that that can be the thing that's halting you. Okay. So what we got to do is when we find ourselves being halted is to understand the universal principles and laws at play. Okay. So when I say you cannot begin what you won't end, that's referring to closure. Okay. That's referring to the law of return. Where you begin is where you will end, right? And what is not ended will continue to return. Which I catch that what I'm saying again. What is not ended will continue in its return. So if you keep having these situations keep returning that you want to stop, you're going to have to end something. You have to identify it and locate that. Now, I won't get in details with that. You can join me on my Patreon, Living Soul, or book. I have a link on here. You can book a Living Soul reading, and we can tap into that to identify those things that might be halting you so that we kind of can move forward, get a whole uh, universal insight into what's going on. But the thing is what we fail to cancel continues, right? Think about it. Also, I want you to think about when we're too preoccupied. In all my years when I'm doing, been coaching and doing like life consulting and things like that, one of the biggest thing that hinders a lot of people when they're trying to make changes and trying to take advantage of their transitions is that they're too occupied. You're occupied with your old ideas. You're occupied with your fears. You're occupied with your doubts. You're occupied with environments that you entertain that does not coincide to where you're going. You're occupied inside relationships trying to make things work that is stale. When you're caught up in that, when you're fixated in that, you begin to halt yourself and you cannot move forward, even though you're desiring, even though you're irritated, you're frustrated. Your irritation, your frustration, your disappointments don't mean nothing if you don't cancel or end what needs to be canceled and ended. And when you don't do that, it shall continue. To move forward, you have to be clear. There has to be an open capacity to get filled with something new. And in that filling is what gives you the capacity to move forward. But if you have an empty cup, right, and then that cup is filled and you're trying to put something new in it, it's not going to work. It's going to spill out and it's a wastage. And the universe, the spirit, is not going to respond to the intention that you are trying to initiate. Oh, we're going to go right here. Because we got a lot of people that's trying to make their affirmation, especially during this time right now. And let me say this right now. If you're trying to make affirmation stuff, what you're trying to do and execute and trying to act on the New Year's resolution, this is not the environment. This is the time to make the affirmations, to put the things out there, what you want to do. You're trying to set the intention. That's correct. But you're supposed to nest on it. You're supposed to be incubating it. So that way you can build momentum, establish the environments, all necessary things go with it. So that way when the spring comes, when things are about to bud, you can actually bud and move forward and you have a congruence with nature to move right along with you to bring in some of the things you got going on. Now, back to what I'm saying. I want to say that just I know I got people listening. When you're occupied, you limit opportunities. You limit opportunities. When you're constantly occupied and it's in a chronic state, what happens is you activate the law of redundancy. Okay. And a lot of you probably have gotten my book, The Law of Redundancy, where I break this down. But the law of redundancy is activated when you fail to acknowledge the change that needs to be done. When you are at a stalemate, right, and you're not acknowledging it. When you see things are not working as it needs to be, you're still trying to make them work. The law of redundancy kicks in and is trying to signal you and I to dissolve things, to end things. Okay. And when you fail to do that, you now create another resistance against yourself. And so in that part of resistance, what it looks like is you start to see these loops start coming back. You seem like you're trying to step forward, you get pulled back. You start trying to do this, all of a sudden something catastrophic happens. These things are not random. These things are connected to a universal pattern and a sequence that might be visually known or it might not be known, but the impacts eventually will make it known. Okay. And so it's important to understand the psychology of nature. The psychology of nature, if we pay attention, things begin, things end. We have ebbs, we have flows, we have opposites, right? And so forth. And so sometimes we get so caught up only wanting certainty. So a lot of times we can be occupied with that. We only want certainty and we want a high degree of predictability in a thing before we make a move. And this might be the very thing that's causing you to not end what needs to end because you don't have enough foresight or things are not clear enough before you or predictable enough to confirm, like, okay, I could move here. But the reality is that's not always like that. Here's the thing, I'm gonna mess you up real fast. The predictability that you're looking for in order to justify for you to make your moves is in the transition. We ignore the transition because the transition is fluctuating. So picture the wash machine that we wash our clothes in, right? And there's a shifting going on to get all the dirt out. But that's like the transition. It's just shifting. And so it's hard to get a read. But the thing inside the transition, the very things that's shifting. So what does that translate to us in our personal psychology? Is the things that's irritating you. Things are becoming more obvious. It's just like, it's just got you repelled. You're like, oh, I can't stand this. The things you complain about the most is the shift. The things that's irritating is the shift. The things you're trying to avoid is the shift. Well, guess what? Those are things to address and look at because inside of those things, if you look at the opposite of it, there is your answers, more than likely, in high degree, right? So if I'm constantly irritated, like with the group of people I deal with, and they're like, "Oh my God," and you're like, "I'm trying to move in this direction." With the irritation you have with the group of people, look at that irritation and then flip it and look at the opposite side of it. So what in this group that's irritating you, what would not irritate you? Just ask a simple question. Oh, this wouldn't irritate me. That is your certainty. That is your path. That is where you go in the forward direction. If there's a situation that happened that's unfortunate, that seemed random, right? Let's just say, you could type an example down there. Let's just say, you lost a job, okay? Because that's been happening a lot, and just Godspeed and peace to everyone that's really trying to plow through the difficult times with the economy right now. So let's say you lost a job. Let's look at just at the loss of the job, okay? Let's look at with the loss of the job. Let me flip that. Let me upgrade it to a job you're irritated with. You're irritated with the job that you're doing. You really don't want to do it, but you're doing the job because it's serving its need for what you need at that time, right? But the irritation of that job is constantly irritating. It's, oh my God, I dread to go to work. I dread to do this at this time. So when you look at that, try to get yourself clear. I'm irritated with this job. I can't stand this job. I really don't want it. If it was up to me, I wouldn't be working this job. Look at the opposite of what will welcome you or what type of job you would like, right? And then start to look at everything aligned with that. That is your certainty. That is your predictability. The challenge is to align yourself with that. How we align with ourselves? Set the environment. The first environment is within ourselves. Get yourself to that orientation that needs to mirror that. that's going there, right? Also, like we said, what you don't begin, you can't begin what you won't end. Even though you might be still at that job, you have to be willing to end the things you're attached to that that job is providing. So in other words, I know it's paying to be. I know even though I'm working this job, I'm detached from convincing my mind that I'm dependent upon this job to meet these things. I am now attached to there's another opportunity that could fulfill the same requirements and the needs that I have right now. So I flip my mind, even though I'm working this job, even though I got it sustaining, I'm not attached to it. I could change it to dime. So in other words, as soon as you do that, opportunity is now formulating energetically. Oh, this is good for somebody. It's formulating for you. It's now available for you because what was the key thing you did? You established detachment. I'm not saying quit your job. What I'm saying is you can detach from your dependency on what that job is providing for you because what's occupying the mind is occupying your time and you're limiting yourself. But I just know I'm just here doing this, but now I have opened myself to another possibilities, to new insights. Now, what you just did, you created a transition. So now things are shifting. And so now you're working along with the direction you need to go. So when you go into the transition, there might be things that you and I need to activate, initiate into transition. Man, this job is irritating me. Okay, so that means you need to initiate transition inside yourself. Because think about it, a lot of us are working jobs, right? And we'll continue to work it for the next 5 years because we're so um, dependent, right? Or attached to it weathering the storm for us where we're at right now. And we're limiting ourselves from the opportunities to possibly expand or to get more free or to find something that's more self affirming to what we desire within ourselves, right? And so you get caught up being in this, you create a new cycle actually of unfulfillment. Think about that. So I'm working this job. Now you're creating this unfulfillment. Now you're sowing seeds into yourself of unfulfillment, not even realizing it. So now you create this whole nother counter cycle against the cycle that you want to be in. I want to move forward in fulfillment. So you got things going, you got things going in two different directions. I'm working this job, but I'm keep energizing unfulfillment because I'm attached. So what you got to do, if you keep going this direction, you got to detach so that way you can flip and look at this way. And that when you do that, when I detach and I look in a different direction, I'm now working the principle of polarity because now I've opened opportunity to swing the pendulum to go in a different direction. So I can move in this direction. We can't not just cite things, right, and expect to change. We have to instigate a disruption that goes into a transition. And in that transition is where we are looking to the other side where we need to go. Now, here's the thing. Some transitions, a lot of transitions are not short termed, unfortunately. Some are. Some might be like a month or two. Some might be like 6 months. Some might be 18 months. Some might be 2 or 3 years. As I said, don't quit your job. But what I'm saying is, I mean, as an example, but what you want to do is when you understand you're in the transition, it might not make sense to everybody else on the outside looking in with your decision making that you have going on. But you understand that my intention has to be met with my heart, has to be met with my mindset. What one thinks in their mind, so are they. I have to continue to make sure that my orientation is right there. So when I'm sitting there making decisions and projecting things, it's all in alignment. But you also have to audit your mind. You have to audit your heart, your motivations, to make sure that the intent is clear, that your thoughts are more in the direction of this way than that way. I'm not saying you want to have thoughts that go in a different direction, but you want, for example, I use the example going this way versus this way. If I have counter, if I have conflicting thoughts with the direction I want to go, let's say from a scale out of 1 to 10, right? You don't want those conflicting thoughts to exceed 3. In other words, okay, 3 times out of 10, I have conflicting thoughts, but 7 times out of 10, I got confirming thoughts, right? As long as you got the 7 confirming thoughts, you got more pull. Now we're talking energy. You got more pull pulling you this way, right? Even though you got the conflicting thoughts, that happens. We're human, things, whatever. So I want to speak. What I'm saying is right here. So some of you are right in the middle of a transition. It don't feel good. You feel like you're being suffocated. Things are not clicking. Control what you can control. You can control what you're focused on. Some of you, like, you know what? Stop going to the mailbox and reading the damn mail. That's reminding you of where you're currently at. I'm not saying avoid. I'm just saying cut off. Put your blinders up. You're talking to certain friends, and it's always reminding you of the way that. No. I'm in strategy. I'm in an intention, and I got to get so closed off enough to where it's sealed. Then once it's sealed in me, then I kind of entertain, the stuff that's kind of coming in, because I won't become it. That's the battle. You see, when you're going through a problem, you don't want to become the problem. You want to recognize it, but you want to be above the problem. You want to be in a position where you can resolve the problem. You want to be in a position where you can alchemize the direction of the problem. You can't do it when you make yourself co-equal with the problem. Hey, peace. So in the transition, we miss the transition. Okay? So it's very important. Welcome yourself into the transition. Acknowledge the transitions. How can you tell? For example, let's say in a relationship, say like y'all didn't really argue a lot, and all of a sudden you start arguing all the time. You're irritable, and it just seemed like everything is just misfiring. I'm not saying I don't mean to cancel a relationship, but it's obvious there's something or some things that needs to be ended in y'all's shared intention. And it's probably beneficial for everyone involved, right? It doesn't mean to dissolve. It's like, yo, let's recognize something right here, because you might be moving to a new phase in life, a new phase of intention in the direction where you're trying to go. But sometimes, just like a plant, we got to prune the leaves for new growth. You got to end something, right? What we do sometimes is just without thinking about it, we keep going and 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 going, and we don't really, we keep accumulating things. Then we're too heavy for the new opportunity or for the new evolution. So the universe and the spirit has this way beyond intelligence that we have ourselves. And we're very intelligent, but we're not way in the universe intelligent. So it has way, and it's like, so it's prompting certain things for us to recognize, like, oh, I have to shed. A lot of us are resisting the shedding process. You think about like our animals, I remember I was growing up, I used to have a Samoyed, like a real beautiful white Alaskan dog. And so she would shed a lot, right? When the season started getting warm. So spring and summer. So whether I might have forgot, it didn't matter what I was thinking. Nature was taking its course, and I started seeing clumps of thick white hair all over the house, which is like, hey, despite you ignoring this, the universe is prompting you to recognize you need to make sure, and her name was Angel, you need to make sure that you trim Angel down to the point, because her full coat is no longer needed for the season that she's going into. So you need to what? Trim it. Now, when you get into the fall and go into the winter, let it grow and let her go outside because she loves it. She's an Alaskan dog, based like an Alaskan wolf, right? So even though we might be forgetting because we're so caught up in the actions what we got going on or demands in life, the universe will send promptings to us. The problem is we ignore them, we override it. And so, and then like the last leg becomes that transition period. And we're like, oh, we're not doing it. We're trying to hold on to what was instead of trying to look at to where we need to go to. And so we stay in this battle. So I'm letting you realize, like in this transition, don't ignore it, embrace that transition so you can shift. Okay. So another thing I want to talk about is the thing that's holding us back at the end. Is romanticizing the past. I can hop on social media and look at some people and I see one minute they're crying for change. But in the same breath, I look at them reminding of them of their thing that's hurting them. I'm not saying dismiss it. At some point, we're talking about healing. Healing means to restore. Where will you be restored back to? If my basis is peace, my basis is a sound mind, if my basis is being aligned and being balanced, then I need to restore or return back to that. But that's not my base. If that's not my base, I'm going to always return to the very thing that I am, whether I acknowledge it or not. I might like chaos and just haven't admitted it. I might like the drama and haven't admitted it. So if it keeps reoccurring, you got to look at that. Like, is there a little subtle thing that you like in that? I remember I was in a coaching session with someone one time and I was letting them talk. And it came out of their mouth. It's like, I kind of miss some of the drama that I had with my significant other. And of course, I paused and I was like, you can't have two realities occupying the same space. Either you want the peace and wholesomeness or you want the conflict and drama. And some of us are trying to pair and merge, and we refuse to end things in order to begin things. You have to end things because energetically you can't have these two counter realities in the same space. You got to choose one. You have to end it. Okay. And so when we don't do that, we continue it. All right. So when we look at the psychology of nature, it ends things before it allows things to begin. So it has to be clear. So that's where we're at right now. So I'm encouraging everyone to look at the things that's conflicting right now, the things that's really a main pain point right now, right? Remind yourself of that, where that pain point is, what really should be happening versus what I'm doing right now. Look at that, and then begin to identify all of the things that's related to that, that's fueling it. And be honest with yourself and ask, what are you keeping alive? What are you fueling? Because what you fail to cancel, you're just giving fuel, you're giving fuel for it to remain. And so at this point, you want to end things. We just ended the number 9. We're now number 1. Numerology number 1. And inside the living soul numerology, we recognize this as the soul nurturer. So once we end things, it now puts a new shift of our focus to now position ourselves to nurture what we desire to experience, to nurture what we desire to grow, right? And when we talk about nurturing, there's also required pruning, okay? And so now we're also are willing to support the things that need to be supported to grow. One of the big things about the soul nurturer archetype, and it's an energy, and it's a force, it's an attribute of the supreme universal intelligence. There's a nurturing quality. So one thing is, before things emerge, you got to set the environment. You got to set the soil. You got to till the soil. and then put in the seed into it. And then we begin to what? Cultivate and make sure everything's required in that environment or in that soil for things to grow. So a lot of us are at a space right now to initiate the new. It's not going to appear too quickly. It's not going to appear too soon. Some things might, but a lot of things are not. But what's important is to set the environment. So another thing I want y'all to do is what what is the thing that I desire to see being experienced and expressed in my life continually? What is the environment requirements? Like what's the relationships? What's the resources? What's the actions? What do I need to cultivate inside myself? If there's a gap in my orientation, my competent level might not be where it needs to be, and that's fine. What do I need to cultivate? Because all that's a part of the soil, right? And that soil sets the environment. Nothing grows without a conducive environment that's behind it. Everything we're experiencing, there's an environment behind it. And that applies whether something is good or bad. There's an environment there, or the lack thereof. And when the environment breaks down, it'll bring about the consequences and showing us that. Okay. And so when we look at that, so when we're trying to grow and try to bring things about, look at the environment, set the tone. Like I said before, the first environment is right here. Some of you, inside our Soul Vibe group on the Patreon, we are in what we call the Winter Center. And the Winter Center spells out the whole matrix during the whole winter solstice on what to do and the practices to get aligned with, so that way we can properly put ourselves in the right momentum. And then we did a whole group study to look at our seasonal scores to see what our pull energy is like. Some of us have lower pull during the winter season, some have a stronger pull. And we look at how to align with it, and we look at the different elements that we need to do to align and configure ourselves, so that way we can at least get ourselves in a right pace to take advantage of the transitions, right? So that way when certain seasons are bumping up, we can take advantage of it. Okay. So I'm saying a lot right now, but I'm saying these things just to kind of encourage everyone that's kind of, following this channel, is that it's time to really look at the things that needs to be ended, right? And that's ended. Whether you physically do, at least you got to detach from it, so you can instigate the transition inside yourself, so you can match the transition that you might be in. So when you do that, now you're positioning yourself in a different direction. It might not feel good. The transition ain't gonna feel good. It just, you're like, what the hell is this? And I would say this on transition. Let me go back there again, because I know a lot of people, especially Gen X and a lot of people, I know a lot of my page, a lot of people are like basically close to 50 or older. There's major life transitions that are happening. And so what we got to do is not run from it, because there might be a new structure. So hear me out. There's a new structure on how to operate due to a lot of the changes externally, politically, technologically speaking, and so forth, that might not match our previous practices or models we operated from. So we got to look at and see if we're being prompted to change our model or our template for living and operating. And so you feel frustrated, feel grumbling, it's the transition. So in this transition, open yourself up to develop a new template or a new model, and how you're going to proceed moving forward for the next 9 years. Because we just reset. We just ended a 9-year cycle, so we're resetting. So look at yourself, the next 9 years, how do I want my life to really be looking in a realistic manner? This is a great time for actually this month, the way the energy is this month, when I did the energy forecast, it's a great month to really look down the road. Okay? But you got to remember, you cannot begin what you won't end. Okay? You won't begin what you won't end. So take the courage to dissolve uh, stale relationships, stale environments. Okay, you've got to do that. You have to do that. Before I hop off here, let me see what some of y'all are dropping. Okay, so let me before I hop off of here. So when we talk about this, the soul number one, the numerology number one, it's about setting the environment. It's also about initiating. It's about caring. Um, there is a battle of empathy that's been going on the last several years. There's been a battle between empathy and apathy, and sadly, um, apathy has been growing. Okay, and so this year is a rise of the water. The water element rises inside the living soul numerology system. So that's signifying a lot about healing, a lot of restoration, refreshing. Now, the other elements that's strong right along with it is the earthwood and is the metal. Last year, the earthwood was what was in rise in 2025. But now in 2026, the water takes a jump up. So there's a lot of refreshing. We have to be willing to wash some things away. There's a lot of structure things in our lives, especially a lot of us, anyone that's over age 45 and older. There are some structural things inside your template, inside your foundation that you're probably operating from that was cool in your early years, adult years, up to this point. The way things are changing so rapidly, and the way the future things that we think future benefits that we thought was going to be there is not going to be there. So this is a broader transition that you got to acknowledge, and you're going to have to rebuild cycles. You're going to have to rebuild relations. Might have to revamp your infrastructure to support you in these golden years, right? In these productive years, in these flourishing years that you and I are in. Okay. And so sometimes, unfortunately, because I talked to a lot of people that's lost jobs and stuff like that, but then we looked at it, it was like, you know what? If I didn't lose this job, I wouldn't entertain these ideas and things I've been sitting on that I know I need to act on. Sometimes the situations happen to prick us into the thing that we already have the capability to do, but we just was attached, right? It was attached. Water signifies attachment. So the water this year is helping us acknowledge the things that we're attached to that needs to get flipped to detachment. Okay. Because the healing is also on the side of what we are willing to detach from. Stop romanticizing the old, especially if it's not giving in the new. You know what I'm saying? If the things in the old is still fueling what's in the new, then cool. But you're going to have to shift your mind. You're going to shift what's impressing you. You're going to shift your social diet. You got to shift your mental diet. And you got to shift your heart diet. And you definitely have to shift your energetic diet. And that requires a discipline. That requires you being willing to initiate yourself into your truth and to walk in that. Because why? Because I want to begin something. In order to begin it, I got to end these things over here. Okay. So the law of detachment, the core value of renunciation, those things are very, very big throughout this year. Um, embrace it. It's not here to limit you. It's actually here to expand you. The frustrations you have, the suffocating you feel, um, you feel like I'm trying to just get some air. I'm trying to, just find some momentum. It's there. It's just not going to show up until you cancel some stuff. Today I came on this morning to put the call out. It's time to end. Let's end it all so we can move in a different direction. Don't get caught up in what is not known. What is known is you need to end some stuff. Act there. And as you act there, eventually what needs to be known will then appear. That's how the stuff works. This leads to that, and this points back to that. And then it keeps you in compliance with the universal flow of things. All right? So that's what's up. One love. We will touch back down again. Share this, to get the algorithms to supporting some life-based teachings and stuff like this. So I appreciate everybody hopping on the Soul to Soul Conversations. I'm sorry, I didn't mention we're sponsored by Wisdomin Family Bottle. It'll be in the description. Also, I know that the flu strand is going around, some different flu strands or whatever. We have RespiCleanse. That will help with the immunity, knocking out flus and stuff like that. So there'll be a link in the description. Just go ahead and get your orders in. We got plenty for you to take care of you on that. And the Wisdomin is a natural multivitamin from the herbs, plant sources, natural stuff, not synthetic, not Centrum and stuff like that. That's got y'all's urine looking like super high yellow. This actually detoxifies you as well. So you want to get all these nutrients to fill in the gaps where we have nutritional deficiencies, okay? But appreciate everybody hopping on. If you want more, jump with me on Patreon Living Soul. Hop on there. Also, we had launched a new podcast, but you have to have membership through the Patreon to listen to all of the podcasts there. There are some podcasts available for the public to listen to, and this podcast is called Living Soul Discovery. So you go on Spotify, the Living Soul Discovery, or you can go to the Patreon under the podcast icon. And if you listen to Apple and stuff like that, you go in there and get the RS feed. But you will have to be a member, okay? There's a couple episodes is there just for the public. But if you really want to get the whole playlist and enjoy that, we encourage you to jump into the membership in our Soul Vibe Tribe. And we welcome you, okay? That's what's up. My daughter took the wisdom silver, and man, I keep it on hand. I keep it on hand. That silver. So like I said, we have wisdom silver too. Get that for your babies. RespiCleanse and wisdom silver. There's something else that's floating around here. So, but we got stuff to support you for that from the Wisdom Therapeutics Herbal Therapy Drops of Life Herbal line. Okay, and all this stuff is all here to help to empower you. Okay. So yeah, definitely hop on there into the podcast. We have and I have on Soul Conversations. Y'all remember we was doing relationship readings and things like that. I will be bringing it back. It will be called like Elements of Us. So we're going to be tapping into the 5 different elements in the Living Soul Numerology system. And I'm going to help break down some things inside your relationships, do some readings to help show you some things where, y'all might strong points, right? Or things that you might need to improve or give you insight. Some of you want closure on past relationships and stuff like that. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to put a link on here, a voicemail link in there. Y'all can click on that, and just all you gotta do is give your date of births from you and your love interest. Okay, and so we'll be having episodes with that. I will continue to, do celebrity breakdowns. I'm actually going to capture the recent breakup of Tiana and Aaron. They just broke up after a year. We know Tiana also got divorced and then started debating, Aaron. So we can kind of look at what was some of the conflicting things low key, and it'll be interesting to see what that is. I'm kind of playing with that number. Someone asked me to look at that. So I was looking at that. So we got some things coming forward on the Soul to Soul Conversations right here. So definitely subscribe, hit the notification button so that way you can get alerted when we drop some things. I might be doing some things this Sunday on the Tiana. So we'll see. I'll put a signal out if we go ahead and do that. But in the meanwhile, y'all enjoy y'all's morning. Take all this in. One love.